All right, I have 7 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Irvin,
Here.
Counselor Heinck. Here. Counselor Lammerman.
Here.
Counselor Meriday.
Here.
I'm going to work on that. Counselor, I can see that your screen lit up and I know that you're present. I'm going to switch the speakers here in the council chambers and that should clear it up, but I'm marking you as present. Counselor Settlemeyer.
Here.
Counselor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Soulsby.
Here. Thank you, Mindy. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh boy, yeah.
Thank you.
There it is. Nice. Utterly.
Items to be added to the agenda. Item A, potential real property transaction from executive session. Public Works Director, Mr. Stewart.
Mayor, were you wanting to discuss this right now or are you placing it on the agenda?
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Irvin.
I would just like to move that we add the item Industrial Park Lot 1 purchase offer from Safe Park Storage LLC to the spot allotted for added to the agenda. Which I'm not actually sure what that would go.
Is it 8C? No.
Would it be under business from the city council? Item.
Recommend not 9, probably E, and move your council comments to F.
Yeah. We'll add it as item 9E and then bump concerns from council to item.
I second it.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion unanimous.
Oh, yeah, back there, yeah. Yeah, back there.
Excuse me, Mayor. May I have a moment to do a quick sound check with Counselor Meriday? Counselor Meriday, could you try speaking again?
Hello, here I am.
Okay, that didn't work. Give
calling
me just a second, okay? And test it again, please.
This is Mary Day and Vanita.
I'm not sure if it's connectivity related to your location, but I did see the chat for your voting and I'll continue to work on it on our end so that we don't hold up the meeting any longer.
All right, I will continue to chat.
Item A, potential real property transaction. Mr. Stewart.
Mayor, actually, we
Oh,
placed it
sorry.
further in the agenda.
Yes. Thank you. Appearance of interested citizens. This is a time for citizen comment. The council will first take comments addressing items not Individual speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer, provide their name, identify whether they are city resident, and if so, their ward. Please limit comments to 3 minutes or less with council approval. Comments regarding any matter scheduled for a public hearing may be provided only during that hearing. The council will not make any decisions based on public comment. However, staff and council may choose to ask questions or comment following the conclusion of citizen comment. Michael Boyd.
Is it on? My name is Michael Boyd. My address is 325 North K Street. I have no idea who my representative for that district is. I came here today to talk to you about some issues with the alleyways. Issues that I've tried to rectify for about the last 15 to 20 years. Haven't had any luck. So if you'll bear with me, I got a little PTSD and a little ADHD, and I'm going to try my best not to cuss during this thing. I know that most of the time people come up here, they're very happy to chat with you folks. I'm no different. Today, I'm coming here to inform the city leaders that I'm running out of people to ask about an issue with an alleyway. I would like to present some of the council members with copies of maps, if I may. Now, I apologize because last time I was here, this also like to give the chief policeman, if I may. Now, right here, I have a photograph of my neighborhood taken from Mount David. I know you can't see it, but this property right here is my property. The house across the street is still there. This was taken in 1905. I don't know when the city drew up the streets and alleyways, but I got a picture back to 1905. All right, we're going to go through the show and tell part. If you look on the map, you're going to see that there's pink lines across that map, and those are all alleyways. And I got these maps from the city. So I don't know when they made those alleyways, but everybody in one that's right beside me. So if you go to map number 2, you'll see, hopefully I marked it for you. There's pink for the alleyways, and there's a little blue X, number 500, that's my lot. Can you see that? Okay. So the lot number 500 is mine. The lot number 300, number 400, those belong to Don Norton. He used to be a city council member here. The alleyway is plugged up with trees, automobiles, brush, and I've gone to the city numerous times to try to get this rectified. At this time, I would like to ask permission from the city council if I could just ask the chief of police a little hypothetical question. Chief, if the owner of Cascade called you up and said, hey, that dumb Mike Boyd done brought a she shed, a 10 by 10 she shed, and parked it right in the alleyway between me and the monkey shop. And then he says, not only that, he brought 2 cords of firewood and dumped them in on the backside off of 6th Street, just laid it out in the alleyway.
Mr.
then-
Boyd, I'm
Yes, ma'am.
sorry, your 3 minutes have expired, so if you could wrap it up.
Okay, well, if I park my stuff in an alleyway, is it going to get towed? The answer is yes. I have a problem in the alleyway with fire danger also. Evidently, I should have broke my name down 2 or 3 times because I had a bunch to tell you. I had the chief or fire marshal, a guy named Danny Soulsby. I had him over at the house. He looked at the brush pile that Mr. Norton built. Looks like a beaver hut. It's about 8 foot wide, 4 foot tall, and it runs the whole length from my property clear up to Mount David. He's already lit the mountain on fire twice since I've been there in 50 years that I've lived at that house paying taxes. I've talked to a bunch of different police officers. I got a James Crosby. I got Mike here, the city manager. I came down and personally talked to him. Faye, I talked to you about this. Lynn, That little gal right there, I talked to her about it.
Mr. Boyd, I'm
Ye-
sorry. If you can, if you wouldn't mind giving us, the council, this in written form, we would be happy to look at it. I just have to abide by our council rules.
Okay, so once again, you leave me with nothing else to do, right? The city will not take care of this egregious
Would-
parking issue? I
would any-
guess I won't look at those
We would like,
commercials that say defendable spaces.
Mr. Boyd, we would like to respond. Counselor Irvin.
Yeah.
You presented the information.
I'm trying.
Absolutely hearing. Speak for myself, but I'm confident that we follow up on this.
I was told that before. Hey, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm just frustrated is all. So if you guys would please ask the chief, what is the ruling on it? Because thank you for your time.
Thank you. We can see your passion, Mr. Boyd. We'll
Not
definitely
passion,
look
man,
into
not
it.
frustration.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Frustration. I deserve a little bit more respect for the place that I live at.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
All right.
Suzanne Reynolds.
Mayor Soulsby, Council. I just want some clarification on, I don't know when it was, probably 6 months ago, one of my first meetings, in asking what could possibly be done with the pallet housing, moving it so that it is available for those of the community that are homeless. They're still a part of our community, regardless of whether they have a place to sleep or not. And I was told that that could not be done because the pallet houses needed to remain available for the community. And then we gave them back to Eugene because what? Their homeless crisisness is worse than ours? I don't understand what you guys are doing with those pallet houses. Why are we doing this? What, they're just going to sit out there and rot? They can't be used by our homeless community, which would actually alleviate a lot of the stress of the neighboring houses that have to see the tents and the garbage and the porta potty that I wasn't allowed to spray paint, but Faye was going to take care of that for me within 24 hours. It's been at least 6 weeks since I've been to a council meeting. It still says eat pussy. We're all worried about what our children see. I think that I would take that quite offendingly if I had a child that was old enough to read and I walked them back on that bike alley and they seen that beyond the homelessness. That is very disruptive. And I was told I couldn't spray paint over it. Why not? It was spray painted in the first place. Why can't I just go cover it up with a different can of spray paint? And I don't understand what we're doing as far as a community working together for the better of the community. Why did we give those back to Eugene? Eugene has 4 different locations of housing for homelessness, plus multiple warming centers, cooling centers, and churches that are available to go to. We don't have any of that. I want some clarification. And why are they just sitting out there? Can we sell them? Can we do something, have some sort of an auction where the public's available or, aware that they too have an option to buy a pallet shelter and put it where they want to? Anybody?
Anyone want to respond? Well, I don't speak for the council, but when we purchased those pallet shelters, it was for definitely for the community, but it was brought to us as an emergency as far as with fire, flooding. And so it was my understanding that it was not ever intended actually as a permanent homeless shelter. And they were gifted to our city from Lane County. And so that is who we returned, not all of them, but a portion of them back to them.
So why not
because that's
return
where
them
they
all
got
if we're not going to use them?
Well,
My-
it was always our intention to use them for an emergency situation, like like the Mackenzie fire or anything like that. And so our issue is where does, well, speaking for myself, where does the city, where are we, as far as responsibility and funding wise, who's going to take care of that? And that was what we ran into with the camps. Is it was a liability. We all saw what happened as far as the overflow, the cleanup, everything. And so you would have to man the camp, and we don't have the funding as a city. And so that was my understanding how that all came about. Counselor Settlemyer.
Yeah, and the idea of us having a resource that it doesn't feel like there's a clear use for that. So I think what it would inform me is maybe we can talk about possibilities of what could the pallet shelters be used for, or maybe facilitate that there are outside of our community uses. You're right. You brought it up before, and maybe this is. I'd like to think this might spur us to have those conversations.
Okay,
I don't
and
know how to say
This
that.
thought just came to mind and I'll be done. I still have 4 seconds. You stopped my clock. Could we possibly have some of them at the camp as storage so that the people that are accessing the camp legally and following the rules not have to pack all their stuff up and carry it with them and then return? And that it could, maybe a couple of the shelters could be put there just for storage purpose?
Counselor Irvin.
I appreciate you bringing it up again.
Thank you.
Much of the reasoning has been presented here. I will say that I am very hesitant to engage in any more offerings that are kind of a free-for-all without any oversight, without any actual means for moving people from homelessness to housing with requirements of standards of living. What we tried, I think, was disgusting result for the people, for the community, and like so, short of a service provider or an organization that would take ownership of shepherding that process of off the streets to into housing, I would not support sending those shelters out into some other capacity. I personally would like to see them broken down into their stowed configuration, stored maybe at the city shop for when an emergency like we originally had. So they're preserved as much as possible, not rotting away. And if we have to stand up a little mini community because people's houses have burned, it's not just a fire somewhere else. It could break out in our town. The idea is being ready to, basically emergency respond. That's what I'd like to see the remaining shelters for. I believe I voted yes that some of the shelters could go back to Lane County. That's from whence they came. They were a gift. They were asking for them. We weren't currently using them. So be it. Move them into that if they can manage them. And the impact on us here, however they were to manage them, would be negated in that. So that was a concession on my part. I didn't really want to give them back because I wanted as many as possible for as large of an emergency situation as we could have. But I can see that was a concession in my mind on doing that. I don't know if that helps give some context.
Zelo.
And also one other comment I would say too is the council did put up a managed shelter on 99. And the numbers that we got back as far as success rate were pretty tragic in themselves too. And even with a management team, It's my understanding we only homed one person out of there who's no longer housed. And so in 2 years' time, there's a bit of frustration for how much money that the city spent on that, that was unsuccessful. So, we have to balance all that, and especially in a budget crisis,
Thank you.
thank you. Ruth Lenos.
I'm Ruth Linos, the president of Downtown Cottage Grove. I don't live in Cottage Grove. I live in Springfield.
Hi, I'm Ryan Thomas. I am Vice President of Downtown Cottage Grove, and I also live in Springfield. And we're here tonight because we've been discussing an ordinance that established EBID years ago. And the ordinance deals with a process by which liens are placed on property owners' buildings. It was a process that was initiated by the business owners in the community at the time. Over time, it's become very unpopular. We started to discuss abandoning the process and funding our board and our efforts a different way. That conversation led to discussions with City Manager Mike Sauerwein, and we since have discovered that the way the ordinance was set up, the city attorney has stated that the city has to administer the collection of these fees, and we cannot as Downtown Cottage Grove. We also don't have an interest in doing it anymore. Again, it's unpopular. And so you will be brought by the city staff a discussion of repealing the ordinance. And we are here tonight just to let you know that the Downtown Cottage Grove Board has already voted unanimously to abandon this process and dissolve this structure and move on in a different and separate way and continue to serve the community in our district as the local Main Street organization. So we have plans in place for that. We'd love to see you support that and repeal the ordinance, and then we'll be moving on with our plans. So thank you.
Thank you. Johanna Z.
I'm Johanna Z. I am a city resident, Madam Mayor, councilors. I had some comments tonight on the chronic nuisance property draft. So if you have that in front of you, this will make this a little easier for me. So page 2, just some humble comments and thoughts on it. On number 2, just a clarification on C, where it says destruction of the property, thing, substance. I thought maybe object or something might make it a little bit more clear. I don't know what thing means. I think that going into the definitions, still on page 2, where it says chronic nuisance property means, and that first one where it says or whose patrons, I think that needs to be expanded upon, because patrons just means customers. So clients or those receiving services may just broaden it a little bit, or perhaps add patrons on the definitions and define it there. I think just to keep that. And I thought that the phrasing, as a result of 3 or more separate factual incidents at the end, was, I think it clouded the meaning of the whole thing. I think it was a little bit redundant, that last little part. Separate factual incidents could potentially be added to that very first line, 3 or more separate factual incidents of any combination, because otherwise it got really a little confusing there. Going on to the page, one that I thought was more important actually was the emergency closures, 8.12.310. I was a little concerned about this part. It talks about if the enforcement officer determines real property is an immediate threat to the public safety and welfare by virtue of activity, which would establish a violation of this article. And then it goes on. I think that is a little bit too much power for maybe one person to have, and it needs to be expanded upon a little bit there, because as we've seen in the past history, who gets to decide what is a threat to the public safety? It does say which would establish a violation of this article. So a violation of this article would actually mean 3 separate incidences, 24 hours apart, right? So you'd have 3 days worth, which doesn't really necessarily constitute an immediate emergency. So those are just my thoughts on there. And on that same part, it said preliminary injunction ordering closure of the real property. So I'm wondering how that would apply to empty buildings per se. An empty building is also potential chronic nuisance property. So would that maybe expand on that on that? Otherwise, looks great. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. All right. Item 6, public hearings.
I just see that Archangel and I'm like, dude, I've been playing so much Tarkov lately. This is the one. Let me just drop. So he tells me, he's like, this
Counselor Mary Day, can you mute?
Electric, yeah.
We can hear you.
So he brings in this, basically the same case as that, right?
Counselor Mary Day.
I tried to mute. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
All right, I will mute. I thought I was unavailable.
Thank you. Public hearings. This public hearing is being held to receive public testimony for the ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code regarding various sections of Title 14. These proceedings are being recorded. In accordance with state law and city land use procedures, I will summarize tonight's Type 4 legislative procedure and the standards of your review. First, staff will review the staff report and identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan and/or State of Oregon statewide planning goals that apply to this proposal. Staff will also review the Planning Commission recommendation on this proposal. Following staff's presentation, we will take public testimony and then return to staff to present additional material or comments based on the testimony. Following that, council will close the public hearing. Your testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed toward the identified substantive criteria or other substantive criteria in the comprehensive plan, development code, or statewide planning goals, which you believe apply to this application. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker or other interested parties the opportunity to respond may preclude an appeal of a decision on the proposal at issue. For anyone wishing to speak, if you are accessing the meeting in person or using video, please raise your hand to be recognized. If you're accessing the meeting using only audio, please announce that you would like to speak. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the presiding officer and state your name and address for the public record. We ask that each speaker limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. Presentations will be timed and you will be informed when your allotted time has expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked by the presiding officer to immediately conclude their remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to the staff. Written testimony may be offered and will be considered and made part of the record. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group. Each person may testify only once, unless called upon by request of council member to respond to a question. Before we begin, does any council member wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest in this matter? I will now open the public hearing. For the purpose of taking comments on ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code regarding various sections of Title 14 at 7:29. I see no one. May we please have the staff report? Ms. Crowe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So the purpose of this public hearing is to receive comments on the proposed amendments of various sections of Title 14 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code. Staff is proposing these amendments in an effort to come into compliance with state law that requires certain land use applications be processed as limited land use decisions. The following chapters of Title 14 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code are proposed to be amended by this application. They are Chapter 14.22, 14.41, 14.42, 14.43, 14.45 and 14.46. Just as an FYI, this ordinance was revised for a few minor grammatical errors. And in section 3, we changed the word "its" to "their." The applicable statewide planning goals for this application are Goal 1, citizen involvement, Goal 2, land use planning, and Goal 10, housing. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on the attached ordinance on June 18, 2025, and recommended approval of the draft ordinance to council. It is now appropriate that council hold the public hearing on the ordinance, and this ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? I see none. Counselor Merryday.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I wanted to ask on 1441-300, under H, where it says the planning commission is the final word, and the city council no longer no longer has input on that, and that's a type 2 land use decision.
Mayor and council. So yes, Merryday, apologies. Counselor. So yes, the type 2s would be appealed to the planning commission because they are the next highest up body. And then at that point, they would get appealed to LUBA. So yes, council would be taken out of that. It was a discussion between city attorneys and staff as to which route we wanted to go, if we wanted an extra step or not. And so we, amongst discussion, decided LUBA.
Thank you, Lenny. Anyone else?
Thank you, Planner Crow.
Counselor.
Thank you, Mayor. Question for Lenny. There was a change of the process specifically for lot lines adjustments, moving those from a less restrictive process to a more, was that mandated through the House bill?
So Counselor, property line adjustments did not change. They are still a type 2 application. Partitions are still a type 2 application. The things that have changed are site design reviews, and subdivisions, and replats. Replats are when if it was originally created by a subdivision, it had to go through that same process. So by moving subdivisions down to a type 2, we had to do replats as well.
Property line adjustments from a type 1 to a type 2, and I had the same question, but I assumed it was a prior policy choice or an edit.
It was an edit.
Okay.
It was in that table as a type 2, and then he went down to the next table and it was a type 1. We were just fixing the consistency. That was an error previously that was never caught. So it has been a type 2. It's being updated to in that table specifically. Is that what you're mentioning?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. I had said, why? If it's not mandated, why are we doing this? I'm not sure. So do we know the history on the change of that?
To be honest, Counselor, no. It's something that we don't typically look at as much. So it might have just been an oversight because the type and procedures are contained within the code itself and not just in this table. So I think it was just an error previously. So we're just trying to rectify that one.
Okay, so there's got to be another section where those are listed under type 2, and this was just getting it in sync with that.
Correct, Counselor, yeah.
Okay. Well, I was thinking just in general, if it was that before, and it doesn't have to be in this edit. I know there's a lot of things in the code that we want to look at to make sure are serving the community now, but maybe we can just note that would be in the laundry list of why are we doing this? Is it serving us well? Is it mandated? Can we facilitate the process for people wanting to do things on their property, is make it as simple as possible for them? I think, yeah, that shows up in a few different spots. think for this discussion, that was the main question. Thank you. I guess I will just give a teaser. I think I may have mentioned it before, but there's a section on, and I have firsthand knowledge of this. This is why it's on my mind. There's a section in the code about setbacks that are specific for garages and carports, where they're prohibited from like the far backside towards the house of the sidewalk to the building structure. It needs to be like 20 feet back. Other structures are permitted, but garages and carports. I've recently wanted to build a carport because our garage was converted to a living space in the 70s. And so you have a driveway going up to it and you can't have a carport. It seems like in this hot weather, sure would like to be able to, one, put solar up there, a place, that's kind of permanent, and to be able to park a car that's not directly in the sun. But there's no permissible way in our code, evidently, to do that. And that seems, the reasonings were given are so that you're not blocking view. So viewability, certainly we want to address that. The proclivity for people to close in their carports, which I don't think is a reason not to. That seems like a code enforcement thing. So, so I don't, maybe this isn't the time to modify the code, but I just want to put it in there. That is something that I would like to be looked at. And maybe if the council thinks it's worth having the planning department, make a proposal of how that would be done, I'd like to see that.
Thank you. Anyone else? At this time, we will receive testimony from interested members of the public. Please remember to state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone wish to speak? I see none. I will now close the record and public hearing at 7:38 p.m. Council will deliberate and make a decision on this ordinance as agenda item 8A. This public hearing is being held to receive public testimony for an ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram Map and Title Use District Map for 710 North 19th Street, map 20-03-27-20-02001 MCPA 1-25. The City Council will make a final decision on the ordinance based on the complete record, including the Planning Commission recommendation and testimony received at tonight's public hearing. These proceedings are being recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the City and State of Oregon. This is a Type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan and/or State of Oregon statewide planning goals. For anyone wishing to speak, we ask that you use the sign-up sheet that has been provided. Interested persons will be recognized in the order of their names that appear on the speaker's list. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and you must state your name and address for the public record. We ask that each speaker limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. Please remember that all presentations will be timed. You'll be informed when your allotted time has expired. I will ask all speakers exceeding the time limit to immediately conclude his or her remarks. If you do not finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to the staff. Written testimony may be also offered and will be considered and made a part of the record. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group, with the members of the organization standing to show their support. Each person may testify only once unless called back to the podium at the request of a council member to respond to a question. Before we begin, does any council member wish to declare an actual or a potential conflict of interest in this matter? I see none. I will now open the public hearing for the purpose of taking comments on the ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram Map and Title 14 Land Use District Map for 710 North 19th Street, map 20-03-27-20-02001, MCPA 1-25 at 7:40 PM. May we please have the staff report, Associate Planner, Ms. Crowe?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive comments on the proposed amendment of the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram Map, the Title 14 Cottage Grove Development Code Land Use District Map for 0.28 acres of land owned by Anna Miller and Isaac Boatwright at 710 North 19th Street. This application is to change the comprehensive plan designation of CT Commercial Tourist to C Community Commercial and change the city zoning of CT Commercial Tourist to RC Residential Commercial. This ordinance was also revised for grammatical errors as changing the word properties as in plural to singular property. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on June 18, 2025 and recommended approval to council. It is now appropriate. Oh, before I do that, the appropriate statewide planning goals are Goal 1, citizen involvement, Goal 2, land use planning, Goal 8, recreational needs, Goal 9, economic development, Goal 10, housing, Goal 11, public facilities and services, Goal 12, transportation, Goal 13, energy conservation, Goal 14, urbanization. It is now appropriate that council hold a public hearing on the attached draft ordinance. This ordinance has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting and staff is recommending adoption. Thank you.
Does council have any questions of staff? Counselor Lammerman. Microphone, Counselor, microphone.
Just for general knowledge, there's a residence on it right now. Why is it zoned commercial tourist?
Mayor, I'm not sure why it was designated that, other than commercial tourist is kind of the in-between zoning between commercial and residential. There is an existing residence on it, and because of the zoning of commercial tourist, if it was to get destroyed or burned down, etc., they would not be able to rebuild. So by changing this designation to the residential commercial, it achieves a similar effect as the commercial tourist. It's just more neighborhood friendly in the fact that they can rebuild their house.
Anyone else? All right. Counselor Urban.
I'm looking on under Goal 10, housing, Exhibit 2. Did that chart come out of the housing needs analysis report from 2018?
Yes, Counselor.
Okay, because I've been in my mind looking for how are we doing in terms of what was stated we need, and it seems like it was talking about what the current demand is, but that was the demand back in 2018 or whatever it was.
Yes, Counselor. And that's the data that we have available, right? So based off of those projections, that is what we are looking at. Staff is working on a new one in the coming years that is required by the state. So this table will be updated eventually.
And do we have a running total in each of those categories of what has been produced since the analysis came out?
Counselor Mayor, I believe that is part of our yearly budget review, like summary page. And so it'll say how many new houses we've had during the year. I don't know the number off the top of my head, but that data is out there.
Year by year, but not total to date. Unless, okay.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilor Urban. Yeah, the building department keeps a tally yearly. We have to actually provide census reports to a couple different companies or, like Portland State University. So off the top of my head, I can't give you that running total, but if it's reports and data that we have produced since 2018 every year.
Thank you. Just please, as the council, that is information that would love to have on some recurring basis. I don't know quarterly or something, just how we're doing in terms, because it does inform many of our policy decisions.
All right. See any other questions? At this time, we'll receive testimony from interested members of the public. Please remember to state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any testimony? I see none. I will now close the record and the hearing at 7:46 p.m. Council will deliberate and make a decision on this ordinance as agenda item 8B. Consent agenda. Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. Move that the council approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Item 8, resolutions and ordinances. First vote for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code regarding various sections of Title 14. Associate Planner Crowe.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. So council has now had a public hearing on the proposed amendments to various sections of Title 14 of the Cottage Grove Municipal Code. The Planning Commission also held their public hearing on the attached ordinance on June 18, 2025, and recommended approval to council. It is now appropriate that council consider the ordinance, which has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
Resolution number, please. Or ordinance, sorry.
It's going to be ordinance number 3194.
Counselor Irvin.
I move to approve ordinance number 3194, amending the Cottage Grove Municipal Code regarding various sections of Title 14.
Second.
We have a motion with the second. Will the any discussion? No. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Wilson,
Aye.
Counselor Merriday,
Aye.
Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Counselor Hink, Counselor Irvin, Counselor Settlemeyer,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Item B, first vote for ordinance amending the Cottage Grove Comprehensive Plan Land Use Diagram Map and Title 14 Land Use District Map for 710 North 19th Street, Map 20-03-27-20-02001 MCPA 1-25. Associate Planner Crowe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Council has now held a public hearing on the proposed amendment of the comprehensive plan land use diagram map in the Title 14 Cottage Grove Development Code Land Use District Map to redesignate 0.28 acres of land owned by Anna Miller and Isaac Boatwright at 710 North 19th Street, map and tax lot 20-03-27-20-02001. This application is to change the comprehensive plan designation of CT Commercial Tourist to C Community Commercial and change the city zoning of CT Commercial Tourist to RC Residential Commercial. Planning Commission has held the public hearing on the attached ordinance on June 18, 2025, and recommended approval to council. It is now appropriate that council consider the ordinance, which has been available for more than 1 week prior to this meeting, and staff is recommending adoption.
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve ordinance number 3195, amending Cottage Grove's comprehensive plan land use diagram map from CT Commercial Tourist to C Community Commercial, and the Title 14 land use district map from CT Commercial Tourist to RC Residential Commercial for the parcel located at 710 North 19th Street, map and tax lot number 20-03-27-20-02001.
We have a motion. We have a motion with the second. Any discussion? Oh, Counselor Lammerman.
What's the tax change, if any, changing it from difference between the two?
So I am appraiser with the county. I did used to work as one. There, the zoning should not impact taxes. They're taxed on the structure and the land. There's different land codes. I suggest talking to the assessor's office regarding it, but to my knowledge, there should be no tax change.
Anyone else? We have a motion with the second. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Counselor Hink,
Aye.
Counselor Merity.
Aye.
We lost connection again, but I can see that you voted and I can read your positive vote in the chat. Thank you. Counselor Settlemeyer,
Aye.
Counselor Wilson,
Aye.
Counselor Lammerman,
Aye.
Mayor Soulsby,
Aye.
Counselor Urban.
Motion carries unanimous. Business from the City Council. Item A, appointment of members for the Planning Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission. Ms. Clemmer.
Good evening, council members. Council appointed a subcommittee to conduct interviews of candidates for the Planning Commission vacancy created by resignation and the Historic Preservation Commission vacancy created by term expiration. The subcommittee was appointed at the May 13th, 2025 City Council meeting. Counselor Settlemeyer is chair, Counselor Meride and Counselor Irvin, who ended up replacing Counselor Hyatt due to work conflicts, volunteered and were selected by council to staff the interview committee. Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Commission both had one vacancy and both were advertised. Interviews were conducted on July 3rd, 2025, and Chair Settlemeyer will announce their recommendations. Staff agrees with these recommendations.
As mentioned, we had the privilege of interviewing Jim Colton. And just, I would like to, well, this is for the Planning Commission job. And it was wonderful that a person who lives in town who said, I've lived here for 20 years and I'm trying to find a way to give back. And he knows the job. And we have a wonderfully experienced applicant here. And if it's appropriate, can I make a motion? Okay, so I move the council approve the appointment of Jim Colton to the Planning Commission for the current term ending December 31st, 2025.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Can I
Item B.
do the second
Oh,
one?
I'm sorry.
No,
Yes,
no, that's
please.
no problem. I didn't
Yes,
think I
historic
should clump
preservation.
them. Yeah. Okay. We also had the opportunity later that day to interview Matthew Hewlett, who brought a little different skill set to our group. Admittedly a newbie in this kind of work, but he has definitely interest and energy to expand his knowledge in codes and things. His energy and his willingness to bring a genuine interest in the topic encouraged us to say that he would be a good applicant, well, a good person to bring into the fold for the historic preservation group. So is it okay if I do that motion? Okay. I move the council approve the appointment of Matthew Hewlett to the Historic Preservation Commission for the current term ending December 31st, 2027.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item B, award of Cottage Grove South Sixth Street Water and Wastewater Extension Contract. And Mr. Stewart, but before you get into this, I need to recuse myself because our son actually put a bid in his company on this project. So, Council President.
Public Works Director Fay Stewart.
Thank you, Council President and Council. So back on June 9th, 2025, Cottage Grove posted an invitation to bid for extension of the water and wastewater utility lines 100 feet on South Sixth Street from Hillside Market to McKinley Avenue. Sealed bids were due by 2 p.m. on July 1st, 2025 at Branch Engineering, located at 310 5th Street in Springfield. The intent to bid was advertised on June 9th in the Daily Journal of Commerce. 6 bids were received and opened on July 1st. The following bids were received. One from H&J Construction for $114,290.50. The second was Wildish Construction for $129,803. Riverbend Construction third for $133,073. And Pacific Excavation for $144,587.20. ML Hawk Construction for $168,510.50. And the final bidder was Owen Construction for $185,136.19. The bid packages were reviewed and found to be responsible and responsive, with the exception of ML Hawk Construction, who did not submit their first year subcontractor form, and Owen Construction, who did not request to be placed on the plan holders list, which is required in section 10 of the project manual. Branch Engineers recommendation is to award the contract to H&J Construction, as they were the low and responsive bidder. This work is necessary to supply water and sewer services to 2 properties owners on McKinley Avenue that desire to annex into the city of Cottage Grove. If there are any questions, staff recommends authorizing the city manager to sign the contract and the associated documents to award the bid.
It's something.
Council President, let's see if Councilor Meredith's mic is working. Councilor Meredith, would you like to state your question, or I can read it aloud?
Can't you hear me? Can you hear me speaking?
So pause just a moment, please, and I'm going to try one thing here, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to read your question aloud. Try speaking one more time, please.
Testing 1, 2. Testing.
Not going to happen. So let me see if I can read this. Councilor Meredith asked, are there other residences along this proposed extension who could potentially connect in the future? And if so, will there be connections stubbed in?
Council President and Councilor Meredith, it is very possible that additional landowners on the McKinley Street portion of this project, that portion of the infrastructure is being installed by the landowners as part of their annexation approval. It may very well be that the owners that are paying for that infrastructure to be installed may come to the council and request that a zone of benefit be placed upon that investment. And but in short, there's not going to be any additional attachments placed unless individuals want to be included at this time. The infrastructure can be tapped and added at a later date with no issues.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I guess I have a similar question comparing. If I have a property that is undeveloped and I want to get power to it, my understanding is that I have to pay for all of that infrastructure to be put in to get hooked up to power. You just said something in that, which was part of the annexation agreement, that there was some compensation that homeowner was on the hook for. When I look at this, I'm saying, is the city putting up that whole 114,000+ for that expansion? If this was outside of the city limits, was that property developed without system development charges? How does it work in this case? If you could just kind of lay that out more.
Thank you. Council President. So the situation here is this infrastructure is in 6th Street. It takes the existing infrastructure and extends it down to McKinley. In the annexation agreement, we've designed infrastructure to go down McKinley Street. That infrastructure is going to be installed by the property owners that are being annexed and are going to directly hook to it. The infrastructure that is being awarded in here is going to be paid for city dollars, and the engineer is going to determine how much of the capacity that this development is going to use, and they'll be charged to reimburse the city the amount of their capacity. Do you understand that?
I think so. So this is essentially expanding the city's capacity to serve this.
Right on out
new-
6th Street.
Mhm.
It's annexed presently. We annexed it from Lane County approximately a year or two ago. Actually, we did it when the Hillside Market
Mhm.
annexation request came in. We asked Lane County and we annexed. They transferred the jurisdiction to us and we annexed it clear down to the end of city limits. So that's already in the city limits, 6th Street. But the side streets like McKinley and all those properties are still, they haven't annexed until the recent application that's being processed.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, would entertain a motion? Counselor Wilson.
I move that city council award to H&J Construction for $114,290.50. The bid to I'm looking at it right now. I'm trying to find it here. Okay, here we go. Recommended language. I think I'll use that.
Okay, Counselor, on page 2, there's a recommended motion.
I got it here. I move to award the Cottage Grove South 6th Street Water and Wastewater Extension project to H&J Construction, Inc. for $114,290.50 and direct the city manager to sign the contract and all associated documents.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So we can just do by shows of aye. So all who are in favor signify by saying aye or indicating online.
Aye.
Ayes, aye. Any opposed? There are none, so the motion passes unanimously.
Item C, authorization to participate in cooperative purchasing through Sourcewell to purchase a 2025 Caterpillar 420 backhoe loader. Public Works Director, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So the city owns 2 Caterpillar backhoes. One is a 1999 model 426C, and the second one is a 2007 model 430E. The backhoes have both been excellent machines and used daily by the Public Works Department. The 1999 backhoe is at the end of life for daily use. It needs to be replaced. The city budgeted to purchase the new Caterpillar 420 backhoe loader in the 2024-25 approved budget. We placed an order for the new backhoe. The backhoe's been on back order and was delivered to Peterson Machinery the middle of June 2025. Consequently, I didn't have time to do the necessary public notice and also get it to the city council in the previous budget year. So that's why you're hearing it in this meeting. The purchase of the backhoe will come from the city street and utility reserve funds. Staff investigated the policies and procedures of the Sourcewell contract and found it to conform to both the city and state contracting laws. The city Sourcewell account number is 99315 and Peterson Machinery's contract number with Sourcewell is 011723 capital C, capital AT. Both the city and Peterson Machinery are participants in Sourcewell, allowing the city council to award the purchase of the CAT 420 backhoe loader using the Sourcewell contract saves the city approximately, well, not approximately, $47,637.20 off Peterson Machinery's sell price for the backhoe. Required notice pursuant to Oregon Revised Statutes 279A.220 and City Rule 137-046-0460 and was published in the July 1st, 2025. And as of the close of day, 5 p.m. on July 11th, there's been no comments received regarding this potential purchase. I would point out that legal counsel suggested, and I made a adjustment to the actual purchase agreement. I added an Exhibit C, which includes the Sourcewell solicitation and Sourcewell contract. And I didn't provide it with you as pretty much boilerplate contract. But if anyone wants to see it, I'm happy to give it to you. So that is included in the actual agreement. So with that, staff recommendation recommends the purchase of the 2025 CAT 420 backhoe loader to replace the 1990 CAT backhoe. The 1999 backhoe will be sold and proceeds returned to the reserve funds that purchased the new backhoe.
Counselor Urban.
Mayor, I move approval of the agreement to purchase the CAT 420 backhoe loader from Peterson Machinery for $160,936.94 and direct the city manager to sign the agreement.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Is there any discussion? I see none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Item D, approval of collective bargaining agreements with Cottage Grove Local Number 737 Public Works Laborers Unit and General Unit. Mr. Sauerwein.
Well, good evening, Your Honor, members of the City Council. For the last 6 months or so, we have been negotiating new labor contracts with the Laborers International Union of North America, Local 737. These two contracts, one is for our public works folks and the other is for the general unit, which is essentially the folks who work at City Hall. We have reached tentative agreements on both contracts, and the unions have ratified the respective agreements. Both of our current agreements actually expired at the end of our last fiscal year at the end of June, and so these new contracts would be effective as of July 1. So city staff would recommend that both contracts be adopted by the city council and direct the city manager to sign them. And on a personal note, I just want to add a huge thank you to Faye and Mandy, who played a huge role in getting these two contracts negotiated and put in hours and a lot of time. I also want to thank the bargaining unit folks for the amount of time and effort that they put into it, two of whom are here this evening, Melanie and, you know, I can only see like the top of Lenny's head. But I want to thank you and the other members of the bargaining unit as well. So with that, I would recommend that the contracts be approved by the council.
Entertain a motion. Counselor Irvin?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that both of the contracts presented be approved by the council and signed by the city manager. Noting that they be first.
I second. We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? Counselor Irvin?
Just, I would like to reiterate what I heard and jump on that this was probably a different kind of negotiating year, with the future being maybe even more uncertain if it's possible than in previous cycles. And appreciation for the staff. And what I take away from it is that we have a very committed staff to the community, and we're very good to work with in that, and that's very much appreciated, and look forward to a bright future.
Thank you. Counselor Lammerman?
Madam Mayor, I didn't recall seeing in there anywhere. Is this a 3-year contract or 5? 3? Okay.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Item E. Potential real property transaction from executive session. Public Works Director, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. So on June 23rd, the city received an offer from Safe Park Storage to purchase lot number 1 of the Cottage Grove Industrial Park. On July 14th, 2025, city staff presented the offer to the city council in executive session. Staff has prepared a purchase and sale agreement reflecting the offer of the council for council's consideration at tonight's meeting. The offer for lot number 1 is for $140,000 by Safe Park. This lot is unique. It's in the industrial park. It's parallel to Carnegie Way. On the north side, it's 1.14 acres, and it's a tier-shaped piece of land. Actually, maybe a raindrop-shaped type of piece of land where really only about 2/3 of it would support traditional development. I would point out that this property's been sold twice by the city and gotten it back. We actually went through the process to declare it surplus and was going to award the sale to another purchaser about 8 months ago, and that purchaser called me on the day of the city council meeting and backed out. So hopefully this sale will proceed. I would note that it was pointed out in the executive session that item Exhibit B, because I took the previous purchase sale agreement that legal counsel created, and I did not change the item Exhibit B to reflect the new offer, so that needs to be adjusted. But other than that, staff's recommendation is for council to consider and potentially accept this offer. And we would work with our real estate agents, Campbell Commercial, to complete the purchase or the sale.
Thank you. Ms. Connolly?
Thank you. I'm just wondering, are we considering that the public hearing has already been held, or will there be another public hearing to consider this particular PSA and dollar figure?
I guess that's a question for you.
I would recommend that we hold a public hearing at some future meeting where the PSA is completed and part of the packet. But
I'll okay. Because we've done it once, so I don't, I guess I was unclear as to if we have to do it every time. Because we don't have a council meeting on the 28th, I am concerned that this offer may disappear.
I don't know anything about how this compares to the prior terms. Usually what I recommend is that the public hearing includes the terms of the offer so that members of the public have an opportunity to say, we're in support of this. This sounds like a good use of, the council's fiduciary duty for public property, or not. And so I actually am going to rely on you, staff, to determine if that
The previous
opportunity's
previous
happened.
Offer that was publicized for public hearing was for $98,372. And this offers for $140,000, so it's substantially higher than the previous one. And there was no comments at the previous.
So I think as a legal matter, it isn't necessary, although the public, are you bringing the agreement back in front of the council, or are you just asking tonight for permission for staff to sign it once it's completed?
If it meets your expectations, I would appreciate it that they could give direction to Mike to complete the sale. If you're saying we need to do a public hearing, we'll bring it back. I'm just concerned that.
Nope. I actually was trying to determine if that was necessary, if it was one, part of the plan, and two, necessary. So I have to say, as a legal matter, I don't think another public hearing would be required, since the prior terms that were published and members of the public had an opportunity to comment on were lower than this current offer. But it is a council choice. If you felt like a public hearing was necessary to consider this by the public. In addition to the prior public hearings, I hear that I think there may have been two.
Counselor Sotomayor.
I assume that this $140,000 offer came in as a reaction to like a no sale happening from the other one, but couldn't the public have reasonably gone ahead and come forward after like this other
Yes.
offer?
So Mayor, Councilor Sotomayor, there's been substantial time in between, approximately 8 months since we went through this process before. This property's been sale and been advertised for sale for probably the last year and a half. So anybody can make an offer. One did about 8 months ago. We brought it to the council, went through the process to dispose of it. And that individual chose to back out at the last second. This, I don't believe, is anywhere in conjunction with that previous potential sale.
But what I mean is, it isn't like this person had private knowledge of it or something. This has been a public action since the first hearing was presented and stuff. It sounds like I'd feel really comfortable saying move forward because somebody already had a chance.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm kind of excited because I feel like I'm learning something about public hearing requirements here. You're saying it would be legal to move forward, and that the purpose behind a public hearing isn't about the purchaser or by name. It's mostly about the fiduciary responsibility that we have to do what's right by the city's finances and resources. Is that kind of what I'm gathering?
The legal obligation, you're correct. So the legal obligation is to ensure that the public knows that the city is declaring a piece of property surplus, and to avoid situations that have come up in the past. My recommendation, so best practices, is when you hold that public hearing, you also let the public know what are the terms on which we are proposing to sell the surplus property. And the problem, if you don't do that, is that if you declare it surplus, you want to approve a sale, somebody comes in later and they said, we would have doubled that. We didn't know. In this case, that situation should not happen. I suppose it could happen, but the likelihood is very low. So you've already declared it surplus in a public hearing. You've adopted a resolution declaring it surplus, and these terms are better than what were previously advertised. So I just, unfortunately, you can't really extrapolate this information about this type of public hearing to other public hearings because they all have different purposes. But for real property, you have satisfied the legal requirements as well as best practices.
Council approve this purchase and agreement to sell lot 1, the Cottage Grove Industrial Park to Safe Park Storage LLC for $140,000 and authorize the city manager to sign the purchase and sell agreement and all necessary documents to sell the parcel.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I see none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Item F, concerns from council. Counselor Sotomayor.
I have to admit, I've been thinking about pallet shelters too. And I heard a lot of us say, yeah, we should declare some kind of policy, or we should think about this. There's a resource that the city has, and like what was suggested, one of the options could be fold them up, store them until we use them. So that might influence us to say use. Anyway, there's some questions around the pallet shelters. So I would like to make a motion, or have someone make a motion after we had a chance to talk about it, to either do one of two things: create a subcommittee of the council to come back to the council to recommend their suggestions, and perhaps two other suggestions as to how we might handle them, and explain reasons why that they find that, or ask staff to come back to us as to what are our options to using this in their view of what is best for the city. So does anybody else have a suggestion before I make a motion one way or the other and see if it flies?
Counselor Lammerman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Counselor Irvin kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I think it'd just behoove us to have city staff go out and break them down and then stow them away. That way, one, kind of sounds mean, but they're out of sight, out of mind. And two, they're not deteriorating further. For when we need them, we have them. And then maybe looking at selling off that chunk of property they're sitting on. That's my idea.
Counselor Sotomayor.
I would like to maybe admit something, that I may have done a little bit of investigating on this to learn that maybe what we would store them for might be questionable, and maybe be influenced by other insight as to how that kind of thing could be used. So that's why I would encourage us to reach out one way or another to figure out, what would we do with them if we had them stored? And if the council says, yes, store them for these, then, we figured it out. I just hope that we get more guidance, or we seek more guidance as to, should we store these? Should we sell them? Should we give them back to Lane County? There's probably about 8 different things we could do with these things. And so that's why I don't want to just ask the city to pile them up and store them at this time.
Well, I'm of the opinion that no matter what, I think it's good to stow them just to get them out of the weather. And also, my opinion is just my opinion, but that we received these for emergency situations, and how it was presented to the council when we voted was it was for fire emergency, flood emergency. And unless something like that is presented, I wouldn't be in favor. So, Counselor Wilson.
Yeah, the original agreement when this city received them was for that purpose. It was for emergency use housing in case of a natural disaster, flood, fire, that type of situation. So where we had the ability. And I think that that's what the county was giving them to us for that purpose, or inviting them for that purpose. And I think it would be, we've strayed from that in the past, and it was a disastrous experiment to do so. And we don't have an agency that would administer that type of a situation anyway. I do agree that absolutely they need to be broken down and stored to keep them from deteriorating weather-wise. But I think the original purpose is the original purpose, and we should, stick with that, and that's my opinion.
Mr. Stewart.
I hesitate to make some comments, but I'm going to, so I don't get anything thrown at me. So if my memory is correct, the reason the pallet structures were acquired was because we were in the middle of COVID and we weren't able to, the traditional warming shelters weren't available for the public to use. So Lane County gifted, I believe, 18 pallet structures to the city, and the city created the warming shelter site. I would share with you that it takes a lot of work to set this up and a large investment. Each unit requires at least a 20 amp electrical feed to it. So there's a lot of electrical work that needs to take place. They don't need a substantial foundation, but they do need a level pad to sit on. So you have to create a place for them to sit. So it's not a matter of like a tent. You just take it out and set it up and you got it available for somebody. There's quite a bit of work. The former warming shelter site, because of the use that was there when it was just an unmonitored campsite, all the wiring was ripped out of the ground, the conduits and various different things. So there's no infrastructure basically left at the existing dusk to dawn site or 5 to 8 site. So it would have to be reestablished. The present site does have electrical and has a substantial investment in it to make them work there. So I just want to share in each of your minds that it's not a matter of just unbolting them, storing them, and then we're going to stand them back up. There's a substantial amount of investment and time to do it. To actually meet the need of housing somebody that's been displaced because of their house burned down or some natural disaster, I mean, it's going to take some work. The second thing is I don't know that I can commit to a place to store those outside of the weather, dry. Everything that the city has right now is used. In fact, we could use some more. You ask us to tear them down and store them, that we have an adequate place to actually store them. So I want to make sure that you know that there's a lot of work to set them up. And also there's going to need to be a place to store them that I don't know that Public Works can provide at this time.
Counselor Hine.
My comment was along that, what your bandwidth was, what the storage capacity was, and also like, what would it look like if someone were to request one? Like, what would that process look like? Is it, I know it's not as easy as it sounds. So just curious about that.
So Mayor and Councilor Hank, I think this Lenny Crow might have some better knowledge, but these structures are such that they're under the 100 square foot in size. It's possible that they could be put on a legal lot, maybe in electrical provided, that a planning decision. So somebody might be able to set it up with a purpose if it's within our planning and building codes to accommodate that. There might be a way, but it will take some permit issuance, I believe, from planning and development to make it legal.
Counselor Mary Day.
Counselor Meredith, can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, that's a refreshing. So, yeah, I agree with Director Stewart. I know the process of taking them apart is not like a tin. It's very complex, and there are a limited number of times you can take them apart and reassemble them before taking them apart and reassembling them deteriorates them more than exposure to the elements. So that it should be a decision based on input from the Public Works decision to bring us forward a plan about carrying that forward. But on a more festive note, I would just like to invite the council and the public to participate in this coming weekend's Bohemia Spirit of BMD celebration. Dress up, come out, participate, take part in the games and the events. If you have any facial hair, there's a beard contest, there's a pie eating contest, there's all sorts of activities. Look in this week's Sentinel and the Bohemia Nugget to see a full schedule of events. And again, support your local festival. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Irvin? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of new, good information tonight. Certainly impacts decisions on this. I don't know if we need a work session or a segment of that. Maybe we're hashing things out right now, but I am interested to know what our existing emergency shelter options are, what our capacity is. I know we didn't get that resiliency hub grant. You know, I'd like more information on, in the likelihood of, you know, regularly expected to kind of worst case earthquake disasters, what our options look like. I'd also like to know the condition of the pallet shelters as they exist. Do we have 18 left? And so there's some of them are 2-person. I'm assuming some of them are the smaller. So there's, you know, X number of people that could potentially be served. Does that even, in their condition and what it would take to store, does it even make sense to hold on to them? Or, you know, do we make them available to the public? I think I saw some for sale on Facebook or Craigslist for under, I don't remember the price. It was really cheap, maybe $500 a piece. So I don't know how much residual value is in them for public sale. But I do think there's a little more value in the property they sit on right now, and probably like to see that put up for sale. I don't think the routing of that road, which is why we originally bought it, it sounds like that's already established. It doesn't need to go through that property. So maybe the bigger value is actually being able to get that property sold and some revenue back into the city. Street fund? Street fund. Street fund. That sounds like a really good idea. So yeah, those are the things, like maybe a true condition assessment of these. How many times more can they usably be set up and broken down? And would they actually play a meaningful role in an emergency preparedness kind of plan there? So I have other items, but I know we want to go on this topic, so I'm happy to come back to it.
So I'm curious, should we try a subcommittee to get that kind of information together? Should we ask staff to supply us with that?
Good evening, Your Honor, members of the council. City staff can certainly come back with a report. You know, we can also give you, you know, a specific, you know, I'll call it a case study. When we were looking at flooding earlier this year, how we're able to stand up the emergency operations center at the fire department, city staff coordinate with them, how we're able to set up a shelter at the community center and, you know, be prepared in case a whole neighborhood needed to be evacuated, you know, to be able to provide folks getting county emergency management and the Red Cross on site. We can certainly bring you back a report on that.
Counselor Urban, did you have something else?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to hear, there's always more than one side of a story, but I'd like, if there's any information that you can feed us all at the same time regarding this alleyway that a gentleman brought up. Some of the thoughts that were coming to mind are, I don't know how or where it's all applicable, but I remember where I grew up, there was at the end of the road, it used to go through and then it was never maintained by the county. And then people started parking on it and eventually it went to them. Like you couldn't go there anymore after a certain amount. I think it was like 7 years. I don't know what the process is, but I wonder if that's the situation we're in. What is the recourse for this gentleman and anything that could be added for on this topic?
Director Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll attempt to start. So Mr. Boyd brought in a platted map from probably back in the early 1900s of that whole development. If we have an alleyway that has water sewer infrastructure in it, we do the best that we can to maintain those alleyways. I don't believe that there's any city infrastructure in these alleyways. They've never been developed, the one that he pointed out. And it appears to me like the one alley is being used as a driveway / parking lot for the neighboring parcel to the north in the picture that he provided. Mr. Boyd came to me when I was / community development / public works director, and he was having issues with the Norton's property to the west of his end line because the vegetation was growing over his fence coming onto his property. So we tried really hard with Mr. Norton to get him to manage his vegetation. I don't believe it was ever resolved to Mr. Boyd's liking in this manner. So it's kind of a complicated situation. I don't know if Lenny has worked more on it, but it started with me more of a vegetation issue between their shared property lines. This is actually the first that I recall hearing of concerns of the alleyway. That alleyway does extend on a platted map through, but it's never been developed. And in those areas, a lot of times what I've found is property owners just kind of start using those alleyways because they haven't been improved or upgraded. Probably have to look to legal counsel as to, do we try to have, because Mr. Norton owns property on both sides of that platted piece, no city infrastructure, do we have a process that we need to get him to vacate that use of that and then we maintain it? I'm not really too sure where this goes and what the options are, but it originally started as a vegetation management and quite frankly, the property owner that's living at that site's probably not managing it to Mr. Boyd's liking and possibly city code.
You know, my general take is always, let's not vet this in a meeting because I don't know the facts. Staff hasn't had a chance to look at it. If the council's interested in either having staff just take care of it per city code, that's great, and direct staff to do that. If a majority of the council's interested in that, or if a majority of the council's interested in having a report brought back, that would be the way to handle it. I don't want to troubleshoot right now.
Counselor Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, twofold. Yes, I would like to see city code enforced if that's the case. And then secondly, if there's no code that has a reasonable outcome or enforceable outcome, I would like it to be brought back that says, hey, here's ways we can improve the code. But I am operating off the assumption here that it is still city property. And I don't know that to be the case if it's been sat. So that's part of that original question, which is, you know, are we vacating city property in alleys by allowing people to just hang out there? And I don't
the one that comes to mind was the Project Sparrow, no, the bike path back behind Lincoln. That was one of those that even putting the fence up, they had used it for a long time and it looked like a fence came up. So I kind of assumed that the city retained its ownership, even though it was being used for many, many years. But someone driving down an alley, I think, has the expectation that this is city property. I should be able to travel down the alley, and somebody blocking the alley, whether there's city infrastructure on it or not, just at first blush, it's like, hey, you can't be doing that. So I'd like to know if by code they can be doing that. So there's a lot I'd like to know.
Ms. Conley?
The only thing I was going to address is just the concern, government property cannot be adversely possessed. So it doesn't matter what individuals do on government property or what period of time that occurs. It will always remain government property.
Ms. Crowe?
As the code enforcement officer who is very well aware of this case, I'd be more than happy to bring a report back to council regarding all utilities, everything that we've discussed tonight, if that's okay.
That would be great. Do we have a consensus? Yes. All right. All right. Anyone else? Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, Council. So I had mainly just had one safety issue. The pedestrian crossing on Gateway, right by grocery outlet. The northbound side of that, the pedestrian crossing sign, due to the amount of growth on the trees on the eastbound side, makes it impossible to see if somebody's activated the beacon to cross. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people almost hit because it don't know that somebody's getting ready to cross, and obviously pedestrians aren't looking for traffic. But I'd like to see if maybe we can relocate that sign to the center island, maybe to where traffic can see it heading north, or put an additional sign on the westbound side facing south. That way the northbound traffic can see it. Either that or we got to cut down trees, and I'd hate to see that.
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. I think it's the northwest intersection to the northwest corner of Ferguson's Appliances. There is a stop sign there. I feel like I almost blow it every time. And it's got, if there's I almost blow it every time. I was thinking striping on that intersection would be really helpful, and that thought has come to mind every time I almost blow it.
Counselor Wilson.
Yeah, just a reminder, Counselor Irvin, it's a big octagonal red thing. It's a stop. And it just
Yes, but there's usually a truck parked right there. It's really tall. It's shaped like a refrigerator.
I totally understand. On a lighter note, I did have an opportunity to have a really good conversation with a previous member of the Student Advisory Board to the City Council from previous years past, and they no longer live in the area. But they were curious as to whether we were still doing that program or not, and encouraged us to restart it if possible, because it was very helpful to them as an individual. And I encourage that the council look into starting the student advisory.
It's one of our goals.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I have a couple light ones. As Counselor Mary Day said, do not forget about Spirit of BMD. And then also the very next weekend is K&D's car cruise. So I want to remind everyone about that. And also crazy, I had Highway 99 property on my list to talk about too. So it's funny how we're all kind of thinking about the same things. I would love to see what that's worth. Just have an appraiser look at that. I'm curious. And then something that I wasn't sure if I should talk about tonight or not. I do not really get involved with social media much at all, as most of you know. I have a really old account and that's about it. But there was some chatter on there and I addressed it on our Friday agenda session that I apologized for missing the last meeting, but I was very, very ill and didn't feel like I could even zoom into it. But there was some chatter on there and a lot of it, I'm sure was unintentional, but it kind of led to that maybe I wasn't sick. And I want to assure everyone that I take this job very, very seriously. And I feel I have, I don't feel like I need to explain myself, but I feel accountable to the people that I serve. And so I want to make sure that everyone knows that that's something I would never do, is intentionally miss a meeting. And I don't feel like I know everyone extensively up here as much as I'd like to, but I feel like we're all in it for the right reasons. And we all take this job seriously. And, you know, that it's a very important job. And it's important when we have to cast votes, and that I will always hold myself accountable. All right. Anyone else? All right. City Manager, Mr. Sauerwein.
I need to pass out. While this is getting passed out to you, what I'd like to do this evening, Your Honor, members of the council, is really three things. First, I will be asking the council to formally endorse and approve the Budget Committee's recommendation. We discussed that at previous meetings. And I'll also like to continue our discussion of how this goal can be addressed. And then we'll be switching gears a little bit, and Carrie and I will be discussing the repeal of Ordinance 2863, which is the ordinance that created the Economic Improvement District and the Business Improvement District. So just jumping right into this, the Budget Committee recommendation, as we've previously discussed, is moved by Chair Ballard, seconded by Councilmember Irvin. The Budget Committee recommend that the City Council direct the City Manager to bring to the first council meeting of 2025-2026 fiscal year an agenda item to discuss how to reduce the 16% gap in the budget between the expenditures and revenue over the next 3 years, with the first year seeing a gap reduction of at least a third. And as I've mentioned before, city staff wholeheartedly endorses this motion. So we would ask that the council formally agree or disagree with the motion from the Budget Committee.
Councilor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if you're looking for another motion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I would offer a friendly or amendment to it that it's not just reduce the gap, but it's eliminate that gap. So I'll proceed with the motion. I move that the City Council direct our City Manager. So I'm moving that direct our City Manager to present the plan to the council for eliminating the gap between revenue and expenditure, notwithstanding carryovers, allocated ending fund balances, to eliminate the gap, and to do so with at least a third of that gap being eliminated in the first year, but to have the gap eliminated over the next 3 years.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Any discussion? Councilor Lammerman.
Just point of clarity, can that actually be done where you amend or create a new motion for a motion that was made in another committee?
I guess the short answer is yes. This is a motion of the city council. The budget committee made a recommendation to the city council. You basically have three options. You can approve the recommendation, you can deny the recommendation, or you can come up with your own version of the recommendation.
Any others? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor, and members of the council. So as far as this evening is concerned, what I would like to briefly do is first, just provide you with some background information. Second, we'll talk about some potential expenditure reductions. Two that we'll talk about tonight are a police communications dispatch and also the formation of a library district, but that's certainly not the end of the story. As recently as this afternoon, city staff and I were talking about other potential reductions. We've also been asked by the council to take a look at potential revenue sources, and I'll review briefly again tonight the law enforcement utility fee and also looking at our revenue estimates. So going on to that first item, just to give you an idea of some background. Look, in the olden days, the 1990s, every city wanted to have their own police department, their own fire department, their own dispatch. You know, they wanted to have their own library. They wanted to have their own big fleet of shiny trucks just sitting there ready to go do whatever big shiny trucks need to go do. Over the last 30 years, I think we've all figured out that that is not a sustainable business model. Now, I would note that in many ways, the fire service is actually ahead of cities. If, you know, you can even look at what happened in Cottage Grove back in, I think, 2002, 2003. You had the Cottage Grove fire and South Lane and Cresswell come together to provide a higher level of service and probably also save some money. And, you know, we've also made changes ourselves. You know, we don't go buy trucks new, we go to auctions and we buy them that used to be trucks for eWeb or Lane County. And when we do buy new pieces of equipment, like Faye was talking about earlier this evening, we do it through groups like Sourcewell, which I always describe as buying trucks through Costco. You know, we got a $250,000 backhoe that we're being able to buy for less than $200,000 by going through the buying consortium. So, you know, really, that's kind of the things that we need to continue doing. And can you go to the next slide here? And I think, as we all know, in Oregon, we have a structural issue with our property taxes, and that impacts our general fund. You know, my house that my wife and I are renting, the real market value of it's $455,000. The assessed value is $205,000, and that's what we actually pay taxes on. We've reached what I call a crossover point, which means that our revenues have met our expenditures. And it almost becomes a binary decision. We can either increase revenue or we can decrease our level of service. And that's what we need to talk about if we're going to be able to meet this goal that, you know, has been established tonight. So moving on, the chief has been talking with our friends at Lane County about contracting with them for dispatch services. Now, this is not reinventing the wheel. Junction City just recently contracted with Lane County for their dispatch services. Of course, you have a number of cities that contract with the county for law enforcement, and they're providing their dispatch services as well. And the way that our budget currently works for police communications is we receive about $180,000 a year of 911 taxes. And there's two parts to dispatch and communications. And the 911 is where, you know, you call 911, we answer the phone. The larger portion of our cost is for what we call dispatch services. That's where the dispatcher is talking with the officers in the field. And that's costing us about $800,000 a year. And that's the biggest thing that we would want to contract out potentially to Lane County. Now, the 911 money goes with, you know, whoever's providing the service. So that money would automatically transfer to Lane County. Now, let me quickly hasten to say, we would not save $800,000 a year by contracting this out. We would still need to be paying Lane County for the work. So our goal would be to hopefully be able to reduce our costs by about $200,000 a year. And just as a side issue, I think we should support creation of a county-wide dispatch model. And again, you don't have to go far. Benton County, Washington, Deschutes counties down in the southern Oregon actually work together to create the same model of dispatch services. So the chief knows way more about this than I do. So the hour is late, but I think I'll turn it over to the chief and see if you have any additional comments.
All right, Mayor, Council. Yeah, there's obviously a lot that goes into this. This is not a decision that would need to be made lightly. There's two components to this, as Mike talked about, the 911 service, which is where anyone in South Lane County that dials 911, it rings into our dispatch center right next door here. If it is a Cottage Grove Police Department request for service, then they dispatch the Cottage Grove police officers and they handle the call. If it's a medical call or it's somewhere out in the county that's in the sheriff's office jurisdiction, that call gets routed depending on where it goes. So they either transfer the medical calls in South Lane County to Central Lane Dispatch at Eugene Police Department, and South Lane Fire and Rescue has a contract with Central Lane for their dispatching. If it's outside the city limits and it's a law enforcement call, it gets routed to the sheriff's office and they dispatch the sheriff's deputies to wherever that needs to go. So one of the challenges is, if to try to do something like this and look at, how much money would we really save? And until I'm able to have that conversation with the sheriff, and I have a meeting with him next week, I don't really know, because Junction City was able to enter into a contract with them for dispatching services, but they are not what's considered a primary PSAP, which is a public safety answering point. So therefore, they don't take 911 calls at Junction City. They never did. So 911 calls have always gone in Lane County to either Central Lane at Eugene PD, South Lane at Cottage Grove PD, or West Lane at Florence PD. So for them, it was a much simpler transition. Basically, you can turn the dial on a radio and flip over to another channel and you're talking to a dispatcher. So they didn't have to worry about calls coming in and routing calls and all of that stuff. And the infrastructure that goes with that, all the equipment and everything that goes with that. So, and they're significantly smaller than we are as a city. So that's why I'm very cautious about saying that, we're going to save a bunch of money by doing something like this. And so I think at the end of this, we have to look at what are we going to save and what service do we want to continue to provide and how do we provide it? So that's the conversation that the sheriff and I are going to have next week, and look at what that does to the number of calls that will go to their dispatch center, because we're all not going to be able to just talk on one radio channel. And I've already had kind of that discussion, a preliminary discussion about it's not going to work if the solution is, well, we'll just dispatch for you and we can just put everybody on one channel and you've got, everywhere from Veneta and Cresswell and Junction City and Oak Ridge and Cottage Grove police on one radio channel trying to, get out on the air. So I think the recognition is that you would already have to add a second channel and then you would have to staff that frequency as well, right? So you'd have to have the staff to run that console, to staff that second channel, however that looks. Now can that be done for less than $775,000 a year? I don't know. So those are all the questions that we still have yet to ask about just the money piece of it, right? That's just the money conversation. So, sorry.
Councilor Urban.
I move that we continue this for another 15 minutes. Recommend.
Before I move on, any other questions about this?
Councilor Urban.
Yeah, thank you for considering this first and foremost. As I recall in the budget this year, there were increases to replace certain equipment. I associated some of those equipment replaces with the 911 dispatch. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I'm thinking when you're factoring this in,
is there a time before we need to make those purchases? We can hold off decision-making, we can save that. And then the existing equipment, is that something that can be sold to another organization that would affect the budget as well?
Yeah, so Mayor, Councilor Urban, good question. So I kind of brought this up at the end of the budget committee meetings this year because it was brought to my attention recently that some of the equipment that we use for dispatch, which is we have to pay for that. So the infrastructure, the equipment and all of that, that also comes out of our budget, out of the general fund budget. If it is equipment that is used to answer 911 calls, that's where Oregon Emergency Management kicks in to upgrade that equipment. So when I first got here and earlier that summer before I got here, they were in that transition process of moving dispatch down the hall. And so they moved it from the old location down to an office just down the hallway. And there was some upgrades to a bunch of equipment. I don't know if you guys remember hearing about that. I think there was $250,000 worth of upgrades that were done in there. That was paid for by OEM. And so that is the 911 tax money that comes in. And so what happens is that is on a replacement schedule. And I think it's every 5 years OEM kicks in the money and that equipment gets upgraded, but they own it. And so part of this transition is that 911 piece of it, getting all of that equipment transferred to whoever's going to be taking our 911 calls, which logically would be Central Lane. So it would go to them for 911. They would have to take all of the calls, the equipment transfers and all of that stuff would have to happen through OEM. That's not our equipment essentially. So it goes to them. The rest of the equipment and this is what was brought to my attention just a few weeks ago, that the radio equipment that we currently have for dispatch is failing and it's they don't make it anymore. So it's essentially obsolete. And so if something happens to it, we're going to have to replace it. And so I've been looking at that, and unfortunately through however this happened, none of this was ever shared with me when I got here, that this was going to come to end of life sooner rather than later, when this 911 upgrade was done and the whole dispatch center was moved. So unfortunately, the price tag, the early rough estimate was about 250,000. So the vendor has since backed away from that a little bit and said, well, I think we might be able to find you some cheaper options. But even at that, $200,000 for equipment upgrades, where's that going to come from, right? So we have to figure out how to pay for all of that. And the time to upgrade that would be for sure in the next fiscal year. So we would have to figure out how to make those radio upgrades in the next fiscal year. So that's another thing to consider and what that looks like. So I don't know what the opportunity is going to be for us, long-term to come up with a consolidated dispatch center. There's a lot of jurisdictions around the state that do it and do it well, and they've done it for a long time. They run on a service district, much like a fire department does, where they have a board and a director, and then they run the 911 for whatever that service district is. So I think Deschutes County is one of those examples that's been doing it for a long time, as long as I can remember. And then everybody just kind of pays for the service that they want. So whether you're a police department or fire department or sheriff's office or whatever, you pay annually for what that service is. So, and that's another thing to consider when we look at just paying, a contract with the sheriff's office for dispatch services. Their employees make more than we do. So their personnel costs will be more. Any of the costs that they have, administrative costs, infrastructure costs, and things like that, those will, in one way or another, those will be passed through to, we won't bear the brunt of the entire cost, but that cost will be shared by everybody who's on a contract with them. So, so that's why I say this is very conceptual at this point, and there's a lot of really kind of down in the weeds crunching numbers to figure out what makes sense long-term. So saw a couple of hands up there.
Counselor Sotomayor.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like that's something worth looking at. And I'd be curious to hear, like what we did with the money involved with with earlier, where we go out and ask similar districts, what kind of thing, you mentioned some great examples of things that are out there. How much does it cost somebody that has a police department that's about our size of city in that kind of structure, and see if Lane County or Central Lane, thinks that that's worthy for us to expect that kind of fees, and then look at these numbers. I would welcome that kind of information and see how it could fly.
Yeah. So just a quick response to that, Mayor and Councilor Settlemeyer. One of the things also to remember is like the business model is something that we can look at from some of these other areas. And that's, eventually what we would need to do at some point in Lane County. I think that's probably going to happen. But I think the business model is about as far as it goes, because the reality is we're going to pay whatever the costs are to who we're contracting with, regardless of what another agency our size is paying somewhere else around the state. It's going to be based on what their real costs are, and what the cost is for them to provide the service to us. So it'll be very specific to what they think the impact is going to be to their operation and how much it would cost to add on another agency to that. So that's why I'm having those conversations directly with the stakeholders right now. So.
Councilor Urban.
In a similar vein, that's my primary concern here. I don't want to do something knee-jerk reactionary to save cost in year one, because you got this great upfront contract. What's the incentive to keep those costs low over time? Once you've abandoned your unit or your equipment, your costs to reacquire all that stuff are really high. So you have a high cost to move off of that, and reestablish. So that's a sticky situation to be in. Is it a seat on the board, a non-majority position, that is your best hope of keeping those low? If I was that board and we had other projects we wanted to do, so well, we raise rates on all of our contract folks and it fits the mission, and there's all sorts of ways to justify it. But what would keep the cost down? What guarantees could we have? I'm assuming you're having those conversations, but are there any in place?
So, Mayor, Councilor Urban, you bring up some really good points, and those are, when you talk about the pros and cons, those are all the things that I'm thinking about right now, and those conversations that I want to have. If you're just contracting services with another agency, there is no board, right? So, they have the contract. They tell you what the service costs. That's what I was kind of alluding to with Councilor Settlemeyer's question about costs and stuff, is that this is, you're contracting with one entity. That would be one of the pros of eventually in Lane County establishing, a board and a 911 service district, would be that you would have, theoretically representation from all of the agencies to help, better recognize everybody's interests. So does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm hearing that there isn't a district right now. So
No.
That's a hypothetical.
That's a hypothetical.
Like, move towards that. So
Yeah.
be entertaining. That's a long process.
That's a long process that requires cooperation from a lot of different entities too. So that's something that's, that would be really far in the future. So
I don't know if there is a typical, but what's the duration of contracts? Is it a 5-year? Do they do 10-year?
that's a great question. I don't know. That's one of those questions that needs to be asked too. It's like, what are we looking at for length of a contract that, that they would be willing to enter into? And I think probably a lot of that would have to do with their collective bargaining agreements and things like that, because they don't want to enter into an agreement knowing that their bargaining agreement's going to expire, their personnel costs could potentially go up. So there's a number of factors that I think they're going to look at when they try to decide what they want to do.
Counselor Mary Day.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just wanted to point out the human cost. If you work very hard to recruit a dispatch team, and then if they're let go, and then to have to reassemble that team would be, I think, an extremely difficult task.
Well, just kind of moving on then, Your Honor. Thank you very much for the input and comments. The other potential expenditure reduction we've been talking about is formation of a library district. At the recent town hall meeting and also through the budget process, there was a great deal of support for the city library that was expressed. What I'd like to figure out is how can we channel that energy and channel it toward creating a library district? There are 27 library districts in the state of Oregon. This is not a new idea. This is, a very typical way that libraries are funded. And, city staff has already started exploring this option. The first steps is to try to find a consultant or maybe an attorney with experience in forming a library district and create a citizens committee. That's what I mean by channeling that energy to assess the need and complete a feasibility study. And what city staff is already working on is we're looking at exploring some grant opportunities for how we could fund those first steps, how we could pay for a consultant to come in and give us ideas on how we could form a district. We're also reaching out to develop partnerships with the Oregon Library Association, Oregon Special Districts, and the Lane Council of Governments. And as I said at the beginning of this process, this is certainly not the whole list of potential options that we would have. Staff was sitting around this afternoon and, we're looking at additional ideas. So council had asked that we not only look at reductions in cost, but that also we look at potential revenue sources. And, a couple of them that I would just mention is we've previously talked about a law enforcement utility fee. The revenue from that we initially talked about using to add additional police officer positions. We could use the revenue from a utility fee to help pay for our current police services and use that as a way to reduce the overall cost for police services. And also, as I've always said, we need to underestimate our revenue and overestimate our expenses. I've been working with Eric since we've finished the budget, taking a look at things like our franchise fees, our room taxes, and our permit fees. Now, people were asking during the budget process why we were budgeting less money from some of those franchise fees than we had previously received. And the answer is because, we want to underestimate our revenue. Now, when we get to the end of the first quarter, when we've got some actual data, we may be able to true those costs up a little bit and estimate some additional revenue throughout the course of the year. And again, as a way to reduce that gap. So that's what we're working on as staff. More to come, more information. This is the beginning of the conversation, guys. But we definitely are working toward trying to meet the goal that you've established this evening. If you have any questions, otherwise we'll move on.
Counselor Sedemeier.
I know that this is bounced around a lot, and I don't want to make a decision right now, but I would be curious just to hear what the council feels like about this law enforcement utility fee, because I'm just thinking of this fiscal year and the idea that the clock is ticking. Is this something that, you look at the number, if it would be engaged soon, there takes a big chunk of it. I look at these other suggestions and they're all going to need time. I'm just wondering if what we see in front of us is something reasonable to meet what we're hoping happens.
Counselor Irvin.
Thank you, Mayor. As with many different items, I'm happy to put reasonable suggestions up to a vote of the people. And probably the sooner we start on that, I mean, that's one of the few ways we actually get a real temperature of what people want, what they can afford. I think it's a reasonable solution, but obviously it's the shortest term fix I think that we have in front of us, besides the, not filling positions and things that can be done immediately. So yeah, I think you would put that, and I don't know what election that could go on, but my questions are, what I'm not seeing on here are a full-fledged effort to target new development that maximizes the tax base, and, resets the clock on those measures that we have in Oregon. And yes, I would like to request that we could maybe finish this discussion. But I would also suggest that perhaps we put the discussion on the nuisance ordinance to another meeting, just to abbreviate this one if that's possible.
That's perfectly fine. I just the rules say either the presiding officer extends it or a majority of the council. And so, and obviously then a discussion about changing the agenda is also for the majority of the council. Doesn't bother me.
Would the majority of the council like to move the nuisance ordinance to another meeting? How quick is it?
Let me talk to that. Well, I would work with staff, and there are some minor amendments that I already want to make. I thought there was a good public comment today about taking out some redundancy. And there are some tweaks that were raised by the municipal judge. And then it is actually already in adoptable format, but I would want to expand that ordinance just a little bit. It could come back the first meeting of August. I'm not going to be here, which is, I don't think is detrimental. We've talked a lot about policy. You've gotten my legal input. You've had the municipal judge, our litigator, and me work on this. So it really is a policy choice at this point, and you also are familiar with the ordinance adoption procedures, but I wanted to be very clear about that. If it didn't happen tonight, I likely won't be here. Well, I won't be here. There may be another attorney.
I'm fine either way. If we want to do it tonight or go to the next meeting. Counselor Lammerman.
I would just say that since the city attorney has some amendments and changes to do anyways, I'd say let's just move it. Obviously, we would have to do it by motion, but I'd say just move it to the first meeting in August with a complete draft ready to go, and then we can go from there.
Do we need a motion?
No, a consensus is acceptable to direct staff.
And then I just have a couple quick comments on repealing ordinance 2863, which created the Economic Improvement District and the Business Improvement District. Carrie and I had some questions about, what revenue has been received, whether or not there was any on account somewhere, what projects may or may not be done. We think we've kind of collected whatever information we need so that we can draft an ordinance to be able to repeal. And as I've said before to other people, unscramble this egg. And we'll hopefully be able to bring that back to you at one of your August meetings.
Thank you.
And that could conclude my report.
Counselor Irvin.
I know I threw like three things in there at once, but my questions would be, are things like urban renewal district, examination of or competitiveness in terms of, building the highest tax generating revenue structures, are those part of this plan?
Should we expect to see future items proposing more specific things in those regards?
Yes, in fact, actually, we were talking about urban renewal districts at a staff level just this afternoon. And so those are definitely some of the things that we're hoping to be able to move forward on.
Counselor Lammerman.
Madam Mayor, if it would behoove the council, I know it's no longer concerns of council, but I just had one other statement. In regards to like the police department, utility fees and a library district and all that. I know pretty much everyone works for a living, and I know I'm not happy paying for services I don't use, like the Lane Transit District, Portland Transit District. I would strongly oppose any sort of library district that had a fee base to it unless it was able to be done for every person in the city, not only homeowners, business owners, but anyone who pays a utility or something, because it wouldn't be fair to everyone in town to be paying for a library that, like myself, a lot of people don't use. And then with the police department fee, it's just food for thought. I wouldn't want to have a fee to increase the cost of the police department, because at some point, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, if council decides to get rid of that fee, now we have 500,000 more in debt with these positions being there that you have to look at covering.
Ms. Conley, did you have anything else to add?
Thanks. Thank you. That Oregon Government Ethics Commission, despite promising me an updated opinion in early-ish mid-June, has yet to refine that opinion that they issued about meals, beverages, incidentals essentially that are enjoyed by both, volunteers, employees, and counselors. So stay tuned. Mark said specifically that at the last meeting, he had said that as well. So that's continuing. And speaking of Mark, then I wanted to tout a win that we learned about today. So the city received an arbitration award, a win in I'm only allowed to say very minimal things. It was a police officer termination arbitration. Found out today the city prevailed. It's a personnel matter, so we won't go into detail. And if folks have questions, they can contact the city manager. A redacted award will be available in the future, but congratulations. I just think as much time as we spend on difficult issues, it's nice to celebrate the successes as well. That's all.
Thank you. Items removed from consent agenda. I see none. And so this meeting is adjourned. Oh, yes. $308,000. $308,000.